All right, just using the last guy we were using for the subtool master, we're gonna do a really quick transpose master demonstration. So what we're gonna do is we're open up the subtool menu, and you'll see we've got about 7 subtools there. And what we're gonna do is under Z plugin, go to where it says transpose master and hit T-pose mesh. So we'll hit T-pose mesh, and what that's gonna do is take all of our highest. We got all the high res subdivision levels right there. It's gonna make all their low res subdivision levels all into one mesh, which we'll see here in just a second. And when it's done, it's gonna say it's complete. And just to tell you to hit this button when you're done. So what it did was it took all of our subtools and put them to the lowest subdivision level. Actually, this one is not the lowest because it only had 6 subdivision levels. All the rest of them had 7. So this is actually subdivision level 2, I believe. But that shouldn't make any difference. But just to be safe, if you want to, make sure all your subtools are the same subdivision level, just for troubleshooting if it kind of hiccups. But I haven't had any problems, so maybe it's just something to keep in mind. So as you can see over here in the subtool menu, we've got a version of our other subtool that had our other tool that had the 7 subtools. It's all into one subtool now, or one tool. So what we can do is we can go ahead and drag a mask across here. What that's doing is it's grabbing the pants and the bottom of the legs. So we'll go ahead and invert that. And I'll go across the x-axis by hitting X, and we'll make a transposed line with the rotate. And what we can do is rotate both the legs and the pants at the same time. Actually, I'll go into Q, and we'll go ahead and paint this in manually. And just to make sure we got underneath the pants, we'll go ahead and drag a rectangle there. Now when I rotate, we can rotate the pants and the legs at the same time. Same thing with the arms. Again, with the transpose lines, if you're in rotate mode and you hold down Control and drag on your mesh, it'll drag out a masking behind it. Unfortunately, we also grabbed this armor plating, which we don't want. Barely visible down here. They've extended this a little bit, but this is the lasso that I showed you in part 1. So go ahead and click that, and what we can do is unmask this area where the armor is. Also, what you could do is hold down Control Shift, and these will behave just like all merged subtools, and they're all grouped together in a good way. So what we can do is Control Alt and just unmask that, and we'll invert that, and we'll actually drag that line out again. And this is probably going to take some cleanup, so actually I'm going to go into draw mode again. I'm going to go ahead and mask this arm out. And again, we're across the x-axis, so it's doing it on both sides. So go ahead and hold down, we'll hold down Control Shift and click, and bring all of our pieces back. And then we'll hit R for rotate, and we'll go ahead and rotate his arms forward. What this is going to do is rotate both of his arms and his armor over here. We can do the same thing for the body. We'll just drag a rotate line up his body. And we'll turn X symmetry off for this. And we'll go ahead and twist him around. And it left his teeth behind. So what we got to do is, and his armor. So just be careful while you're doing this, that everything is masked off how you want it. Go ahead and twist him around, and then actually we'll just grab his head. Invert that. And I'll rotate that back. So once you've got a pose that you like, what you can do is go up to the Z plugin menu again, and we're going to hit this T-pose to sub-T button. And once it's completed, it'll tell you up here that the transfer of the pose is completed. And for some reason, it looks like I had 2 of the arm pieces over here, so I'll go ahead and delete one of those. And here you go. So you've got the legs bent with the pants following it, and the armor following the arm. And this is super useful whenever you have tons and tons of subtools. I've just got a couple here on them right now. But just posing out a mesh using this as kind of a starting point, and then going in and sculpting out any problem areas is extremely useful. All right, let's talk about Decimation Master next. I'm not going to get real in-depth into this because I think it's a little bit beyond the scope of this DVD, but we can talk about it a little bit. If you go into the Z plugin menu again, open up Decimation Master, this sub-menu, and there's a lot of options in here. We'll talk about some of them. And underneath that, there's a 3D printing exporter, and this is where you can, there's a lot of options in here as well, where you can export stereolithographic files for rapid prototyping and the size of it. And if you go down here under geometry, there's a close holes button, which is very useful for preparing your meshes for rapid prototyping because they don't like open holes when you're going to print out a physical object. Also, underneath preferences, at the very bottom you have decimation master preferences. So between all of these menus, there's a ton of ways to prepare your models for export to get rapid prototyped. And again, I'm not going to go into this really in depth. I'm going to give you the nitty gritty, but definitely look into this. There's some Pixelogic videos that'll get a little more in depth and all this stuff. But just real quick, we've got our head here, and it is about 1.5 million polygons. So we'll go to Decimation Master, and we'll go ahead and pre-process current. We're just going to pre-process the subtool. This is the part that's going to probably take the longest, but once you've done this, all the steps after this are going to actually be really fast. So what we're going to do is go in and decimate it, and you can actually decimate it, look at it, make sure it's okay, depending on the number of polygons you want, and it actually happens really fast after you analyze the mesh up front. Now that we've got our mesh analyzed, let's go ahead and play with some of these options. First, let's go ahead and look at our mesh. I'm going to turn polyframe on. You'll see it's a very even mesh. There's like on the flat areas, that doesn't need as many polygons as these detailed wrinkly areas. So what we can do is Decimation Master, and let's see what this thing looks like with like 100,000. We'll say 100k polys. So we're going to go from 1.5 million polys to 100,000 polys. So we're going to go to the Z plugin. We'll type that in, and we'll go ahead and decimate the current. All right, so we've decimated the current. And if we turn on polyframe, with polyframe off, frankly, I don't see that much of a difference between 1.5 million and 100,000 polygons. Polyframe on, you'll see what it did. And you can actually Control Z, and we'll undo this. And we'll turn polyframe back on. And say we want to do like 50,000 polygons. Go ahead and decimate current. And what you do is you can turn on the polyframe. You'll see we've got about half of what we did before. And you can start seeing some crunchiness in here. It doesn't look that bad. But, you know, you can take it down as far as you need to. And a good way, if you really want to decimate it a lot, you can actually almost decimate to an okay base mesh to start from. But this is a great way to reduce your meshes down, especially for rapid prototyping.